Welcome to the Healers Café, conversations on health and healing with Dr. Manon.
So welcome to the Healers Café. And today I'm having an interview with Dr. Gayle Carson. And she is known as America's foremost expert on women 50 plus. She's a businesswoman, a fitness enthusiast, an animal lover, and a 4-time breast cancer champion. And I think you'll see very shortly, she's best described as having sizzling energy. She has built 7 offices, companies of 7 offices, 350 people, to speaking in 50 countries and 49 states, and to now hosting 12 monthly radio shows with a listening audience of over 500,000 people. Gayle brings humor and wisdom to her interviews and speeches. So I'm really honored that you said yes to being on this show with me. So maybe we could start. So let's go right to like 4-time survivor, and how does that keep you living the life and doing all that you're doing?
Well, you know, I'm always surprised when I find out that I've been diagnosed again, because this has been an over 35-year journey. I mean, this is a long time coming. But I'm not the kind of person that gets depressed. I'm not the kind of person that says it's over. So you just keep going. You do what you have to do and you keep going. You just have to look at things a certain way. And that's what I do. Is everything with me is positivity and positive mindset as well.
Mm-hmm. So when you say like, and again, I'm just going to ask you questions and feel free to, whatever comes to mind. But usually when people get a diagnosis of cancer, especially, it's like, oh my God,
Well, with me, it's, oh my gosh, not again, So, and I really, this time is the worst. I mean, it's the 4th time, and it's the worst because it's traveled to my bones. But they're treating me as best they can. I'm on chemo right now, and I just have to learn to deal with it. So the first medication, well, I've been on a couple different medications, but now what I'm doing is it really threw me for a loop the first time, because I was on triple, 3 in the morning, 3 at night, and it just devastated me. And then I went to 1 in the morning and 1 at night, and did really well on it, so well that now, starting today, as a matter of fact, now they put me on 2 and 2. So we'll see how I do on that. But I continue to do everything that I've done. I continue to work out every day for 2 hours, and I look forward to what's going to be down the road. So I think so much of it is not sitting in one place and saying it's over.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And just your experience, because again, there's a lot of practitioners and many different ways of, sometimes they say that cancer can be a mitochondrial problem, and we need to look at that. There's all these theories, and there might be an emotional component. There's different types of solutions. How when you found out, how were you told, and how was that whole experience for you?
You mean the first time or the 4th time?
Let's go with the first time, and then we can, kind of see how you evolved.
The first time I was really devastated. I couldn't believe it, because I had gone for a mammogram. Truthfully, the first 3 were all found with mammograms. Okay. And what was interesting was I didn't want to go for a mammogram. I was 49 years old. And it was my husband who said, I really think you ought to go. And I said, but I'm so healthy. I work out every day. I eat right. I don't smoke. I don't drink. And was I surprised? And how I found out was, and I'm not saying this is the way to do it, my doctor called up and said, you got massive breast cancer. And I couldn't believe it. This is over the telephone. And I said to him, the only thing I said to him was, am I going to live? Because that's all. Remember, I was 49 years old. I had never really thought about it. it wasn't talked about then 30 some years ago.
No.
So I said, will I live? And he said, yes. And so that's all I cared about. And then I went to the library because there was no internet back then. I went to the library, got all kinds of books, set up appointments with 3 doctors, you know, and did what I had to do. And then after I did all of this and did my research, I came back and I told my family, because I hadn't told anybody anything as yet. And that's when I started with my first treatment, which was at that time was radiation.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that was the first time. The second time was when I went for my mammogram again,
Mm-hmm.
and it was found in my other breast,
Okay.
which my sister had told me was going to happen because she said it's like a mirror image. And so with that one, I had, first I had, I can't even remember, it was so long ago. I think I had a lumpectomy, and then just as I was getting wheeled out of the operating room, they turned, the phone rang, I ran and picked it up, or I shouldn't say I ran because I was in a wheelchair. And the person said, we can't tell, it's a different kind. And so they did a mastectomy. So I've had a double mastectomy, had an implant which burst. So that was a whole other issue because I've had 16 surgeries. And this last one, I found out by, I thought I had broken ribs. My ribs were like, it was just impossible. So I wrapped my ribs up for like, I don't know, maybe 3-4 weeks, and they weren't getting any better. And I said, something else is going on. And that's when I called my oncologist. He did tests, and that's when we found out the 4th time. So now I've been on 2 different medications this time, injections and pills, and they worked for a while and then stopped. And now I'm on chemo pills. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm going through right now.
Oh, geez. So, but this is 49, and then you're
I'm 81 now.
You're 81.
I'm 81. I'm 81 years old. And
wow.
So I'm now going through it again. Yes.
Gee. So, but this whole expertise on women 50 plus came like right after. So,
well, actually, no. This started about 10 years ago. Up until that time, I was working with corporations and associations on business subjects, on leadership, on team building, on things like that. And I worked in 50 countries, 49 states. I had 1,000 clients in 50 industries. And then my husband got sick, and I decided I didn't want to travel the way I was doing. He has since, of course, passed away. And that's when I decided, you know, women who are over the age of 50 think it's over for them. And it's not, it's just beginning. And so that's when I started working with women 50 plus.
Wow. that's very inspiring. And it's funny, you know, this age thing really it gets men too, but women as well. It's quite shocking. And it's changing, I think, a little bit, like the age is being, you know, stretched a little. But in my clinic, I must say, when I first started my practice, I thought, oh yeah, 50s, 60s, that's my older patients, you know. And then I started having 80, 90, and even, women in her 101. And it's like, oh gosh, you know, it's also what they eat, how everything else, but it's how they feel about their bodies and how they live their life, and, you know, the energy they have around them. And it's like, they would come back and say, well, I'm coming just to make sure I'm in top shape and I'm healthy. And it was like, wow, and how old are you? You know, so I've been stretching my, I'm well past my 50s, but it's like, oh my goodness.
I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, no one takes me for 81. They all think I'm in my late 60s, you know, but I have a lot of energy because I do work out all the time. I take care of myself. I'm not doing as strenuous exercise now as I did before because I had such a terrible reaction to this chemo when they had me on 3 pills in the morning and 3 pills at night, that I ended up here. I was a Silver Sneakers Fitness Award winner.
Wow.
And 3 weeks later, I'm flat on my back in the hospital because I didn't eat or drink for 5 days. I was so dehydrated because I couldn't. It was just awful. So I was in the hospital with tubes everywhere. I had things on my legs to keep from blood clots. I had tubes, IVs up and down my arms. I had heart monitors, and that's where I was. And then I came home for 15 days and really couldn't do anything. But then the minute I could, I was back to it, you know. But I'm not working out with the heavier weights that I used to use. I'm still on very light weights. I find that my strength is not the same, but my energy level is. My energy level is. The strength is not, but the energy level is. So just keep going, you know?
Yeah. So what do you attribute your energy to? What gives you energy?
Well, I'm sure some people are going to think this is kind of crazy, but I have one circling me right now down at the bottom. My cats, my animals. I love my animals. I've always had dogs and cats, and now I'm down to 2 cats. And I can tell you that when I was here and in bed, you know, they're right on top of me. They're on my lap. They're by my side. As I say, one is circling underneath me right now. And so that's number one. Number two, I love what I do. I'm not in something that I don't like doing or I hate getting up to do. So I think when you're happy with what you do, and I'm happy with me. I like me. I like the way I treat people. I like how I am. And I've got a great family. And so I think all those things, I'm very active in professional organizations. And so I love all of that. And that really does, you know, keep your energy up. But I've always had this energy. I've always done 42 things at one time. It's just my level, you know. I got out of college in 3 years. I got out of high school in 3 years. I just have always been, I always do many things at one time. I know they say multitasking isn't good, but that's what I do.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's a compromise. It's you do all those things, but while you do them
I hope.
full attention, right?
I hope so.
Well, exactly. It's hard. I mean, sometimes that's I like to have several things, you know, on my plate because I like to switch around because it's like looking through another pair of glass, a different situation, right? So I like to finish one job a little bit, and then it's like, I'll wait before I do the final touches. I'll go to this thing, you know. I think it gets you, or it keeps me alert and excited and interested too, you know.
Absolutely, I agree.
Okay. So tips, I'm trying to think, the wealth of things that you can share with people. Your subject is not happiness, but it should be.
Well, it is. It's about living a joyful and happy life. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
And now how people get there comes in various shapes and sizes, but it's all about, you know, living your best life ever. Yes.
And so what, maybe because this is really about health and people that are listening are, you know, maybe diagnosed with something that could be scary to them or shocking or surprising. What do you recommend that people do generally? I mean, I saw what you did, but what do you feel like are the steps that people should take?
Well, first, I think they have to be very honest about what they're facing. So that's number one. You can't hide from it, and you can't say it doesn't exist. You have to be very honest about what's happening to you, to your body. And then you have to say, how am I going to deal with this? For example, I live alone, and people always say, don't you need a support system? And don't you need this? And don't you need that? But I don't personally. I mean, my kids are there, but, you know, in different places, but I'm really fine by myself. So, but some people need a support group, and some people need friends, and some people need their family close by. So it really depends on what their needs are. The second thing I would say is, what turns you on? I mean, what makes you happy? What gives you, I don't care if it's a movie or it's a television show, or it's a book you read, or it's a place you volunteer. But what makes you happy? What gets you out of bed? And that's what you should be doing, not thinking about all this horrible stuff, you know, and what is it that motivates you? I think that's important. And then the third thing is, you know, what can you continue to do for others? Get the focus off of yourself, and what can you do for others? I think all of that's really important.
Yeah, that's very, yeah, I think it's very true. And it's interesting because there was a study too about nurses being less likely to get ill. It's an older study, so I'm not sure if it's actually true now that so many nurses are more like administration people, right? Because they don't spend time with patients. But when they used to be able to, I think they got less sick. And you would think in an environment where you're constantly with potential sickness, not to get sick was interesting. And then I was thinking probably the attribution to that is because they're taking care of people, because the energy is moving from you to looking after people, you know, and I think that's interesting, you know.
But they still have to take care of themselves, because look at what happens to caretakers.
Yes.
Caretakers very often die before the people they're taking care of because there's so much stress involved. Yeah. So I think, and that's another point to make, I think people need to look at what are their stressors. In other words, who stresses them? Because there's plenty of people around you who stress you, and they could be family members. So you may have to decide, you know, where you're going to do the cutoff. But what stresses you, and what situations stress you, and how do you deal with that stress? And I deal with it through exercise. I deal it with my animals. And, you know, that's what gives me pleasure.
Yeah. But that's to your first point, which really where you said the first thing is to be honest with yourself. And it's that level of self-care. What do I need? You know, when I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and that was 22 years ago now, you know, to me, it was like, I knew that if I told my family, it would cause an undue stress to me, because I would be then taking care of their worries about me. Yeah. And I felt like I can't deal with that. You know, I have young children. I need to look after them. I need to look after me. And that was a stressor.
I believe that.
Involve people who love me, but, you know, and so I chose not to tell anyone, which was, you know, quite an interesting thing to go through as well. But it was that first thing, be truthful to me, what's going to work for me, you know, and that's what I think that's very, very important. So that is your first point. But I was thinking your third point is not focused on you. Once you've done the self-care, it's like anxiety or depression. It's like when you move it out of you and you start to look at how you can contribute the world around you, it changes the energy of how you feel. It just makes you feel, I don't know, it feels better to me. So anyway, it was interesting to hear both those points, you know, raised by you. Interesting. So what else do I want to ask you? I'm trying to think. So you live on your own, and you have 12 talk shows. Like,
yes.
Tell me about that.
I have 3 different genres. I have, and of course I interviewed you on one of them. The Women in Business is for women who own their own business or are senior managers. Yes. So we talk about the obstacles they faced, what they're doing now, what their plans are for the future, how they grew it, how do they hire people, what do they do, that kind of thing. Yeah. I have one for men or women called Living Regret Free, and it's how to live a better, happier, joyful life. And it could be that you've gone through divorce or alcoholism or an illness or widowhood or whatever happens to be, and how you've come out the other side. And then I have what's called SOB Radio, and that's for women 50 plus who are still living very exciting, vital lives. And so there's 3 different genres, and it's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. So, and that's why you do it, because you're fascinated by finding out about people's journeys and having those discussions. Yeah, which is
Yeah.
it's interesting because I did not think of doing a podcast, and yet I was thinking I actually love finding out how people think and what gets them excited, how they deal, my subject, how do they deal with either finding out that they want to become like in the healing profession one way or another, or they've gone through something. And I just find like it's fascinating to find out how we're wired as humans, and just learn from all this. So anyhow, that's why I'm on this journey too. So it's
Well, I think, when you really talk to somebody deep down, it's fascinating. People are fascinating.
Mhm.
And that's the whole point of not judging a book by its cover. I mean, you could look at somebody and you might say, what? This person has nothing to offer me. We have nothing in common. And you sit down and you talk to them, even in a conversation, and you find out all kinds of fascinating things about them. So I think people stop being so judgmental when they keep an open mind like that.
Yes, definitely. And I do think that does increase your happiness, because when you're not like comparing and criticizing people, you're much freer yourself, right? So
Absolutely. But I have to tell you, I am really an animal nut. And if I see somebody, like my sister used to say to me, it takes me 45 minutes to do my walk, except when I do it with Gayle. And then it's an hour and a half because she's got to stop and pet every dog she sees on the street. And it's true. When I see a dog, I don't even see the person, which I know is terrible, but I'm so involved with that dog that I don't even see the person who's got the leash, because I think they're fascinating creatures.
So why do you think you feel so strongly? Is there?
I don't know, but I have to tell you, my mom told me, and by the way, my mom lived to 99 and a half. Sharp as a tack, by the way. She told me that when I was a baby, like 3 months, 4 months, 5 months old, she could never get me to go to sleep. I would never go to sleep. And she started putting stuffed animals in my crib, and I was out like a light. So I've always had this affinity to animals. I don't know what it was, but I just always was like that. And I had my first animal at, let's see, I think probably was 7 or 8, was when I got my real live first animal. And I just loved them ever since.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. Okay, I have now an unusual question that came to my mind, but and I hope it's not intended to be offensive in any way, but do you think, I mean, you're of a certain age, you've gone through cancer like 4 times now, like does mortality, like does that occupy any space in your mind? Do you think about death? Do you worry about it? Do you not consider it? What's your relationship to that whole concept?
I don't really think about it, and I don't really worry about it, but I do say, when I want to do something or when I feel I'm not where I want to be, I'll say, well, how many years do I really have left to accomplish what it is I want to do? So, 9 years, 10 years doesn't seem like a long time, but I'll be 91. What condition will I be in? And will anybody want to listen to me? Will anybody want to look at me? Will anybody want to see me? So I think of age in terms like that, but I don't think of it in terms of when is it all going to end? No, that I don't. I don't know why, but I don't. That's just not where my head goes.
Interesting. Yeah. No, because I do think that makes it sometimes a difference too. In the fear of death, it's almost like some people seem to be quite absorbed by that, and then it's missing life for what it is. It's like they're so focused on that, and I've noticed that with some of my patients. So I was just curious how it was for you. So interesting.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I was in the hospital, lying in bed, feeling horrible with everything attached to me, I thought, how can I be like this? I've got too much to do. I've got too much energy to get back to. This will all go away, but man, is it miserable right now. So it was more thinking about um, getting out of there. And then when I got home, I was sleeping a lot, and I would like go sitting up in bed and watching TV, and 2 hours later I'd wake up and I didn't even know I'd gone to sleep. And I kept saying to my son, why am I so tired? And he kept saying, Mom, it's your body healing. And I thought, poo, 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 no way. But sure enough, when that time was over, I was back and I had my energy back. So it's more about me thinking, I don't like being in this place where I don't feel good. So I got to get back here to where I do feel good, because that's when I can do all the things that I love.
Yeah. So, and other question I had too, which I'm sure will be on people's minds as well. So you chose to do radiation, then chemotherapy. Did you consider other therapies or natural ways of healing yourself? Was that in?
No, no.
Okay.
I really went with what the doctor said. I felt I'm not prepared to take a chance on something I'm not sure about or really hasn't been proven to me. I mean, maybe to others, yes. And so I did what the doctor said I should do. And so I really never considered that. And I know people have told me that they've used natural methods and they've healed themselves, and there's been a lot of visioning and visualization and that kind of thing. And but I decided to do what I decided to do, and I don't know. It's yeah. So quite honestly, yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's a right way anyway. So it's more like, if I think it's the alignment without all the doubt. If you have a relationship with your doctor and you trust them and this is what they suggest, I think if it causes no chaos and no stress to you, then there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, right? And it's more the people who have lost members of the family to like allopathic medicine, and they're like, oh, there must be another way. Is there another way? It's when you start to look at other ways, you have to really become aligned to it. And there's just it's just more visible to find out what drugs do than what alternatives do. And now there's quite a bit of more research might come in that, and it may be further exposed. But I think we tend to look for alternatives when we do, and if we don't, we don't. Like, people survive both ways. And so to me, it's not that, it's really how you live the passion of your life that makes the biggest difference. And that's really what I'm seeing in you. So
well, there's been so many new methods and new drugs and new things. Like, I went to the doctor a couple of days ago for my checkup, and I brought up some things that other people had said to me. Well, what about this and what about that? And he said to me, you're estrogen receptive, so we can't use those on you because it won't work. So and the reason I had such a reaction to the chemo pills was evidently I have an enzyme in my body that reacts to this. Yeah. And so if I don't do it on the pills, I have to go back to getting a port put back in and then do the infusion. And so I really want the pills to work. So I don't know. We'll see. As I said, I'm starting the new regimen today, and we'll see how it goes. But I think, there's so many new things. I met a fellow, well, I knew him at the gym I go to, one of the gyms I go to, because I have 3 different gyms because I live in 3 different places. And I said to him something about, I understood that he was sick, and he had stem cells, used his own stem cells, and recovered fabulously. But it would not work for me because I'm estrogen receptive. So there are so many new discoveries and so many new everythings. I think it makes a big difference.
Definitely. And if you think about it, when you had it, there wasn't really a lot of spoken choices.
People didn't even talk about it. As a matter of fact, I did a public service announcement, and they back in 1987, and they tracked 250 women that came and had a mammogram because of my PSA, and because people didn't talk about it. I couldn't talk about it then because people would think I was dying, you know?
Right.
So I just, and I've had these 17 surgeries, and I can tell you my body is like a roadmap. I mean, you'd never want to look at it. But I did so many seminars, full day seminars with bandages wrapped around my chest because I'd had another surgery, but nobody knew it because I never told them. And I was up on the stage for a full day doing workshops. Mm-hmm. So, it makes, again, it's, I believe, a lot up here.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for, for joining me. And just before we stop our conversation, is there anything, like, how can people find out more about you or your work and, or your podcast? Well, there's links that we can put on the page, but is there anything else you want to share as a final?
Well, if they go to my website, it's www.spunkyoldbroad.com. Exactly. And everything, they can sign up for my newsletter. My radio shows are there. They'll get an idea of the products. I have books and resources, CDs, DVDs, and also what I do, coaching and speaking and so forth. So they can go spunkyoldbroad.com.
Okay. Well, thanks very, very much.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for having me. You're doing a marvelous job in your own profession and in your own work. So keep it up because you're doing a grand job.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at the Healers Café with Dr. Manon. For more information, go to drmanonbollinger.com.